All rise. Order, the Madam Speaker.
There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer and meditation. You may be seated. Let me take this opportunity to greet the Premier, the members of the Executive Committee, all honorable members that is in the House, our guests that is here. They may not be here for us, but MEC Mvoka, they are definitely here for you today. The Secretary and all the staff that is in the House, the HODs that are present here, we welcome you to this budget tabling of the main appropriation budget that is tabled here today. Let's also acknowledge everyone that is following us in today's sitting from Pumakapa TV, from Mhlaba Wenene FM, the community radio stations, on all the social networks such as Facebook and YouTube. Nditi Nkuni Molweni Nonke, goeiemorgen mense. Good morning, everyone. Oh, Jeannie, julle kan so sag sê. Is julle nie bly om weer in die huis te wees nie? Before we commence the business, I think it's just an opportunity that we also wish all our Muslim sisters and brothers a very, shall we call it, a successful Ramadan. We pray for them that the experience will be worthwhile and that all of those that are also in the almost about to finish the Lent period, that they will also find this period a blessing, remembering those in Gaza who will have a tremendous difficulty in their observances. Let's keep all of those in our prayers. Before we commence with the business of the day, please let me lay down the ground rules that will assist in facilitating this house sitting. We are required and to remind ourselves that this is a formal sitting of the legislature and therefore all our standing rules of the legislature applies. Members and guests, and I am begging you now, please keep your cell phones on silent or rather switch them off. It is very, very disturbing when we have one of the members at the podium and a cell phone goes off. Please do note that our proceedings are being streamed live on YouTube and Facebook, as well as that of the Eastern Cape Provincial Government, not just of the legislature. And I've said we are also broadcast live on Mpuma Kapa. We do note that there are members that are not once again appropriately dressed, and we will refer all of those members of the EFF to the Ethics Committee to deal with that matter. We will now proceed to ask the Secretary to read the first order of the day.
Introduction of the Appropriation Bill 2024.
I call upon the MEC Mvoko of Finance to introduce the Appropriation Bill 2024. Over to you, MEC Mvoko. He's carrying very heavy on those books there in front of him. Let's hope the budget is also very, very big, Premier.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Greetings to you. Greeting to the Deputy Speaker, the Chief Whip and the Deputy Chief Whip. Greetings to the Premier, the members of the Executive Council, leaders of the provincial house and local houses of traditional leadership and cohesion leadership here, mayors of our municipalities and leadership of Salga, leaders of political parties, religious leaders, business leaders, leaders of civil society and labor, DG and the heads of department, CEOs and other government officials, the chairpersons of all government entities, esteemed guests, kubo bonke abantu abasimamele kumakhasi onxibelelwano. Good morning, molweni. You will have to excuse me, the sinus got the better of me, but I will try and finish it. It has been a progressive 5 years for the sixth administration, albeit many economic shocks that confronted the country and the province since the beginning of the term. While some of these economic shocks could have been prevented, it's my contention that Mother Nature and the universe were not fair to the current administration. These economic calamities include the COVID-19 pandemic, geopolitical conflicts, generally weak global economy, natural disasters, electricity shortages, and poor logistics. Despite these challenges, which resulted to rising resource limitations, provincial government have remained steadfastly committed in ensuring that the provision of critical and constitutionally mandated services such as basic education and primary health care continue uninterrupted, whilst growth policies to recover and reconstruct the provincial economy are prioritized. Looking back at the journey we have navigated during the past 30 years, President Cyril Ramaphosa during his honor said, "We have transformed," I quote, "we have transformed the lives of millions of South Africans, provided the necessities of life and created opportunities that never existed before," close quote. In his SOPA, Premier Mabuyane nicely summarized the journey of the sixth administration. I quote, "We understand that change takes time, but already the Eastern Cape has turned the corner into a positive socio-economic trajectory in the past 5 years," close quote. This budget, therefore, is not merely about numbers, but a strategic framework that underscores our solid commitment to change the quality of life of our people. South Africans will go to the election polls on the 29th of May this year, and the seventh administration will be installed soon after. It is therefore important that as we transition into that period, we consolidate all the socio-economic gains that we attained and learn from the mistakes that we committed during this term of government administration. Honorable Speaker, it is with great honor and privilege that I table before this esteemed House the 2024 estimates of the provincial revenue and expenditure, the 2024 estimates of the provincial entities' revenue and expenditure, the 2024 appropriation bill, and the 2024 Gazette will be published in the government printing website. Honorable Speaker, South Africa is part of the global community and its economy is therefore affected by global communities. The global growth prospects for the country and the province remain moderate, with a growth expected to fluctuate over the short term, but gradually improving over the medium term. This expected gradual recovery will be anchored by rising global demand due to resilient growth in some of the major advanced and developing economies. The waning off of COVID-19 lockdown scars on the micro, small, and medium enterprises and the tourism sector, and the easing off of global inflationary pressures and downward readjustments of short-term policy rates. Despite the improved global outlook for 2024, South Africa's near-term growth remains hamstrung by lower commodity prices and structural constraints. The real GDP growth of 0.6% is expected in 2023. This is down from 0.8% growth estimated during the 2023 MTBPS. The country's growth is projected to be at average 1.6% between 2024 and 2026. Eastern Cape economy, the Eastern Cape economic growth for full 2023 is estimated at 0.7%, with forecasts of 1.5% and 1.7% for 2024 and 2025, respectively. The growth outlook is supported by the expected easing of power cuts as the new energy projects begin production, and as lower inflation supports household consumption and credit extension. We are concerned by the rise in unemployment rate to 41.9% in quarter four of 2023, after a sustained drop from 45.8% to 38.8% between 2020 and 2023. During that period, we had many of our economic sectors performing positively, led by the automotive industry, general manufacturing, construction, agriculture, and services sector. To return to that trajectory, it remains imperative that government stays the course in its economic policy reform agenda, focusing on scaling up public investments to improve capabilities and capacities and operational efficiencies of critical economic infrastructure, whilst also not neglecting economic transformation imperatives through sector and industry-wide transformation plans. In complementing these national efforts, the provincial government will continue to provide targeted resource and regulatory support to sectors of the provincial economy deemed to have high growth potential. I will expand on this later. Defining the fiscal challenges we are encountering as a country, Minister Kodongwana, in his budget speech said, I quote, "The size of the pie is not growing fast enough to meet our developmental needs," close quote. I think that is obvious. It happens even in ourselves as a province. Madam Speaker, the prolonged periods of minimum to moderate economic growth for the country have translated into fiscal slippages in national tax revenue collections and other fiscal targets. The reality we must contend with is that fiscal resources continue to dwindle while the demand for services is rapidly increasing. This reality has been with us for some time now, necessitating national government to implement fiscal consolidation measures to achieve sustainability. Just between 2013-14 financial year and 2023-24 financial years, the province lost a cumulative total of 33.925 billion due to fiscal consolidation. In the 2024-25 financial year, transfers from national government amount to 92.8 billion, which is made up of provincial equitable share allocation of 78 billion and conditional grants allocation of 14.7 billion. That means the only funds or allocation we can tamper with as the province is the 78 billion rand, because the 14.7 that is of conditional grants. You can't do anything with it. You've got to spend it using for what it is intended to, and sticking to conditions. So you can see that only 78 billion is what came our way from the national fiscus. We are pleased with the increase in conditional grants from the 2023-24 revised estimates of 13.8 billion to 14.87 billion in 24-25. While with the major increases seen in the provincial roads maintenance grant, national treasury tertiary services grant, health facility revitalization grant, and lastly, the education infrastructure grant. Total payments amount to 95.4 billion and include funding for provincial priorities, mainly to address education and health budget, as well as the economic development intervention for the inclusive economic growth. Now, this results in a deficit of 2.5 billion rand. If you consider how much we received that I mentioned earlier from the national revenue and what we intend to spend, there's a deficit of 2.5 billion rand. Now, we've got to find that deficit somewhere, and we will use 1.7 billion rand of its. The province will have to use 1.7 billion rand of its own receipts, and take 802.1 million rand from its reserve to finance the deficit. And this is not sustainable. We can't continue to dip into our reserves. Actually, our reserves are almost depleted. So we can't continue, because there will come a time where when we don't have any of the reserves, the province itself will not be sustainable. The national government has also provided a reprieve to provinces by allocating funds for the carry-through costs of the public service wage bill, an amount of 2.7 billion rand in 24-25 financial year, and 8.7 billion rand over the MTEF has been added to the province, mainly for health and education in that regard. The allocation for the carry-through costs was supplemented by an additional 1.5 billion rand in 24-25 financial year and 4.8 billion rand over the MTEF post the medium-term budget policy statement, owing to the fact that the initial allocation for the cost of living adjustment was insufficient. I did brief the House about the challenge we had, if you'd remember, with relation to the cost of living adjustment, because as a province, we did not budget for that. So once they struck a deal at 7.2, it had to affect us hugely, and we did not have funds for that. But fortunately, the National Treasury decided that they will give us something, particularly for the two departments, health and education, because there was no way that we could have afforded to pay that for health and education. Of course, that was a drop in the ocean, but it is much appreciated. Whilst the provincial equitable share has increased by 13.5 billion rand over the 2023 MTF, the actual net increase is 5.3 billion rand, mainly to respond to the compensation of employee pressures emanating from the wage agreement in the education and health sectors that I just spoke about. The net increase is as a result of 7.9 billion rand reduction that has been implemented by National Treasury as part of fiscal consolidation measures at the national level due to fiscal challenges. I did indicate earlier that from 2013 up to now, through fiscal consolidation, we've lost about 33.9 billion rand. So this year alone, you can see the net increase is 7.9 billion rand. So we continue to lose funds due to fiscal consolidation. Our strategy will therefore align to that of National Treasury to continue with implementation of fiscal consolidation measures in an effort to find balance between revenue and expenditure. And those include vigorous implementation of the turnaround plans at the Departments of Health and Education, reduction of utilization of consultants. I'm sure the honorable members will be happy about this. This is a matter that they've been raising, but it's part of the strategy. Accommodating any new policy priorities and spending plans through budget baseline reprioritization, curbing medical legal claims at the Department of Health and legal claims in other departments, including the consequence management on the wrongdoing. You know, there is an emphasis and a concentration that the claims only occur in the Department of Health. But I'm certain that the committee, the committee at the legislature will agree when they see figures that it's not only the Department of Health where we have claims. We can see it cuts across Department of Education, etc., etc. Soon it will engulf all departments. Now, as part of our fiscal strategy, the province continues with the implementation of the findings and recommendation of the own revenue research study that was conducted for new sources of revenue as well as efficiencies of the existing revenue sources. These revenue sources will contribute an additional 34.3 million rand in 24-25, increasing to 50.8 million rand in 25-26, and 59.5 million rand in 26-27. I must say that admit upfront that we are not performing well when it comes to revenue generation. Though the study indicated that we could get a substantial amount of 7 billion rand, we are far from raising any revenue closer to that 7 billion rand. So the budget we are tabling today is the key statement of the policy of government to outline the budget priorities and medium-term expenditure framework in line with Provincial Development Plan and the medium-term strategic framework. It's anchored on the following policy priorities: accelerating economic recovery and reconstruction, protecting the social wage, strengthening capacity of the state to deliver effectively and efficiently. Now, Madam Speaker, the sixth term of administration saw government embarking on a multi-pronged approach to sustain economic recovery and inspire growth. The approach included mobilization of public and private sector investment, delivery of public infrastructure, and providing support to key sectors of the economy and business. Now, since 2019, this administration has attracted investment inflows totaling 173 billion rand. Now, these investments cover various sectors that are significant to the economy of the province, providing much needed jobs for the people of the Eastern Cape. It's important to highlight that many of these investments are long-term and their implementation and returns may be realized in the medium to long term. Madam Speaker, the provincial government continues to leverage on provincial industrial assets and spaces for local industrialization through the investment and trade support on its two special economic zones. The investment that these SEZs have accumulated over the years has host a combined 83 businesses and have 14,000 people in their employ. We're delighted by the pipeline of investment in these SEZs as they forecast a positive economic trajectory for the province. In the current year, the East London IDZ has reported a 20.3 billion rand pipeline investment value. There are more than 5.6 potential employment opportunities expected from these pipeline investments. We want these SEZs to invest in ICT infrastructure so they remain competitive in the business here in South Africa and abroad. Two of its London IDZ ICT projects, the development of a data center and a manufacturing incubator, are nearing completion. And Honorable Premier, the CEO of the IDZ yesterday informed me that we have received all the funds pertaining to the development of the data center, which is one of the projects for ICT. And thanks to the intervention also of the Premier to be speaking to the Minister to ensure that we receive that. We appreciate the support given to these SSS by the Department of Trade and Industry, and Competition. Since 2019-20, DTIC has transferred a total of 298.8 million rand for top structure to settle or expand operations for several investor companies in the East London IDZ. The provincial government was able to reinforce with a total of 538.6 million rand between 2020-21 and 2023-24 financial years to cover operational costs at the zone. For the 2024 MTF, a total of 294.2 million rand will be allocated to the East London IDZ to fund their operational activities for investment attraction into the province. We're excited by the 3 billion rand in investment by Stellantis Group to build a state-of-the-art car manufacturing plant at Kucha. This investment will bring a lot of jobs and business and job opportunities. The plus minus 5 billion rand dollars green ammonia project in the Kucha SEZ is another source of joy for the province, because it is expected to produce an anticipated 950,000 tons of green hydrogen and ammonia per annum on free operation by the end of 2028. So for the Stellantis Group investment project, DTIC committed 950 million rand for 2023-24 and 2024-25 financial years for the construction of top structures. The provincial government is also setting aside a total of 65 million rand over the 2024 MTF period to cover operational costs at the SEZ. Efforts to establish the Wild Coast SEZ in Tata are gaining traction. Is currently operating as an industrial park. We await feedback from the minister on our application for SEZ designation of the zone, following the investment pipeline of 1.7 billion rand that has been secured. We are resolute in establishing that SEZ. Meanwhile, a service provider has been appointed to install the bulk infrastructure. We are allocating 21 million rand for 24-25 financial year and 55.9 million rand over the MTF to CDC, Kucha Development Corporation, for operationalization of the Wild Coast Industrial Park. With the auto industry, the relationship between the auto sector and Eastern Cape government has strengthened during the 6th administration, with Eastern Cape Auto Industry Development Center, Eastern Cape, at the center of it. And through that strong bond that we have witnessed the growth of the industry in the Eastern Cape, notwithstanding many challenges that the industry has experienced and continues to experience. To date, the industry employs about 55,000 people and hosts about 118 world-class component suppliers with a combined investment revenue of 22 billion rand into our economy by Mercedes-Benz, South Africa, Volkswagen, Isuzu, and Ford in the last 5 years. We're delighted to note that the operationalization of 11.2 billion rand by Bike SA and IDC has started. We visited Bike last week with the Premier to see Honorable Stevenson that it is operating. To date, IDC has invested 1.2 billion rand with Bike SA, investing 2.7 billion rand in phase 1 of the project. Now, the Stellantis Group is the latest to join our shores with an investment of 3 billion rand, a feat that solidifies the Eastern Cape as the hub of the economic automotive sector. Our province is ready to attract more investments from this industry, with the intention of creating more jobs. We are therefore mandating the AIDC Eastern Cape to work closely with Kucha Development Corporation, East London, IDZ, and the Eastern Cape Development Corporation to attract new original equipment manufacturers into our province going to the future, especially those OEMs that are producing electric vehicles. Honorable Speaker, there is no denying of the Eastern Cape's potential to being the food basket of the country due to our comparative advantage in agriculture. The province accounts for a significant share of the country's livestock, milk, wool, mohair, and horticultural production. We want to build from the efforts we have made at a policy implementation level to realize this potential. Over the sixth administration, the government invested an amount of 11.5 billion rand, mainly to fund the agricultural producer support, veterinary services, and agricultural education and training programs. The sector commitment to these important initiatives has helped to drive sustainable growth and development in the agricultural industry, ultimately benefiting both farmers and consumers. The introduction of the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan by government, which promotes the inclusive growth, competitiveness, transformation, employment, and food security, will enhance the strides and commitment of government in supporting the agricultural sector in the province. The plan is linked to the agriculture and economic transformation strategy that Dr. Da developed and implemented in 2017-18, which is aimed at commercializing smallholder farmers. So we are investing 7.7 billion rand over the 2024 medium-term expenditure framework to Dr. Da, of which 2.4 billion rand has been allocated for 24-25 financial year to support initiatives contained in the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan. Included in the 2024 MTF allocation is funding for substitution of agricultural commodities such as soybeans, canola, sunflower, and poultry to drive inclusive and sustainable agricultural development in the Eastern Cape. Furthermore, provincial government is currently finalizing a model for the procurement of agricultural food products targeting school nutrition, patient food, and food parcels program. Now, the model also aims to systematically integrate small-scale farmers and aggregators into agricultural value chains to mainstream government procurement. This model has the potential to open up additional market opportunities for many smallholder farmers and agro-processors within the Eastern Cape province, enabling enterprise development and fostering rural development. Actually, this model talks to why should we have these smallholder farmers producing veggies. Let me just make an example, veggies in the province, and you have a school nutrition program, and you have hospitals, and you still procure all of that outside of the province. This is what the model seeks to do. Madam Speaker, the Provincial Economic Development Strategy that is under review is considering including the film and creatives industry as one of the key sectors of the Eastern Cape economy. Now, this is due to the rapid emergence of the sector in supporting economic growth and job creation in the province. The 39 million rand worth of financial support that government injected to the industry in the current term of administration through the Film Investment Fund has positioned us as the Eastern Cape province as a preferred destination for hosting local, national, and international film production. For 2024-25 and 25-26 financial years, the provincial government is allocating 24 million rand to ECDC to fund, support, and revitalize the film industry. We are intentional, very intentional in these efforts because we want to see local talent, young people who have passion and love for film growing to become film ambassadors in the Eastern Cape and beyond. Just Friday, I was in Nelson Mandela Gqeberha, where ECDC was signing an agreement with the Nelson Mandela Bay Development Agency, and in that they have pumped in 5 million rand, and the same would be done with the BCMDA, Buffalo City Development Agency, the same amount of 5 million rand. That is a partnership we want to have with both of them in ensuring that this industry grows in our province. It is worth, Speaker, the micro, small, and medium enterprise sector remains a crucial player in the development of our economy and employment creation. At a time when the economy is not performing at the level that we all desire, it's important that government intervenes to keep small businesses afloat so they can continue to play their role. It's worth highlighting that 56% of the province's goods and services budget went to the Eastern Cape MSMEs in the last 5 years. And this is part of our policy, early DPF, where we say the government departments should procure most of their goods and services from within the province. The provincial departments spent a total of 76.7 billion on goods and services, with 46.8 billion spent on the Eastern Cape based suppliers. Of the 46.8 billion rand, 38.8 billion rand was spent on MSMEs, with Eastern Cape MSMEs benefiting to the tune of over 21.7 billion rand. A government's broad policy framework for the sector includes formulating and rolling out legislative and policy reforms for the sector, institutionalizing one-stop shops to ease the regulatory burden on MSMEs, providing loans and blended finance, business infrastructure support, and facilitating market access through product certification, testing, and quality assurance. You will recall, Honorable Speaker, that provincial government allocated 100 million rand to the Economic Development Fund at ECDC during the 22-23 financial year. We've been told that thus far, 81 million rand of the 100 million rand has been allocated to 6 approved programs, with the balance being rolled over to the 24-25 fiscal period. Now, the six approved programs, they cut across sectors that are seen as key to province's rapid industrialization, job creation, and poverty alleviation agenda. And the fund has been able to leverage external funding participation in the 6 funded programs from the private sector to the value of 78 million rand. This is one of the conditions we gave to them, to say, we're giving you 100 million rand. We're not expecting you're not going to make an impact or a dent if you think you're going to go alone with this 100 million rand. You need to partner with the private sector. Even if you can, you must go into situations where you partner rand for rand. And if you do that, you will be able to make an impact with the 100 million rand we gave you. So they're reporting now having leveraged 78 million rand through what they have already dispersed. And for the 24-25 financial year, we've decided to top it up by 30 million rand for the continuation of the fund, with 8 more programs expected to be supported. I've actually spoke to the HOD and I said the HOD must go there to ECTC and look at the 81 million rand that has been dispersed. Must be able to look at plans and say, we have given AIDC 15 million rand. I said to the HOD, go there and say, produce the business plan of that 15 million rand. So you don't just, give out funds to even people that are not in need of funds. It must be supported by a business plan. But also, we must look at ECTC does not does not share the money. I remember the story of the 1.1 billion rand, if you remember, of the stimulus fund, how the departments dealt with it. And I'm saying the ECTC cannot use the funds for itself and put the money in some of its own accounts and come to us and say, we've spent the money, and yet the money remains with them, and they're running their own programs. That's what I've asked the HOD to go and check. Now, over the 2022-23 financial year, the provincial government allocated 25 million rand to the Agri-Blended Finance Scheme at Eastern Cape Rural Development Agency as an incentive to provide financial loan and non-financial support to emerging farmers, social enterprises, and small businesses in the province. To date, a total of 16 farmers were approved to the value of 15.2 million rand. In the investments we have made to the education sector between 2020-21 and 2023-24, an amount of 75.2 billion rand was specifically allocated to youth education. And for 2024 MTF, we have set aside an amount of 63.485 billion rand for youth education. And in addition to the above, the province has invested in various youth programs over the 2024 MTF, which include youth in sport amounting to 212.2 million rand and youth in business amounting to 164 million. Madam Speaker, as a point of emphasis, this province has invested in youth employment in the following programs: an amount of 4 billion rand spent through the Presidential Youth Initiative. A total of 100.5 million rand has been spent from 2021-22 to 23-24 on accelerated professional and trade competency development program aimed at developing artisans and professional skills in the province. An addition of 167 million rand has been allocated over the 2024 MTF to continue with the APT, COD, as well as artisans. An amount of 9.2 billion rand was spent on interns, learnerships, and expanded public works program from 2020-21 to 2023-24, with a total of 73,144 youth employed. And a total of 5.9 billion rand has been allocated for 35,439 youth to be employed over the 2024 medium-term expenditure framework, which starts now. Speaker, the focus on the entire country is on stabilizing energy security so we can reignite our economy. And there are various plans by the Eastern Cape Provincial Government, its public entities, as well as private sector in the province to invest in renewable energy to mitigate the impact of electricity outages in the province. The plans on the table would include, amongst others, enable small-scale embedded generation, development of battery energy storage system, LNG gas to power. You would remember that Kucha was identified by the minister as that it should be the hub of LNG gas to power. Green hydrogen, wind, and solar energy. So the execution of those plans, several energy-related projects are currently being implemented or close to being implemented in the province in partnership between government, its public entities, and private sector. These include Eskom Transmission Division, will open around 790 megawatts additional grid capacity for new generation to Eastern Cape wind farms by 2025. Because one of the challenges that the Eastern Cape faces is the grid capacity. That the more we have of these independent power producers who are unable to transmit all of that energy into the country because of the grid capacity. The provincial government is also focusing on supporting the enabling conditions for utility-scale energy project development, which ultimately unlocks the growth in sustainable energy in the province. This includes unlocking challenges related to land tenure and spatial planning, general permitting, vulture challenges, grid infrastructure, construction support, and many others. We therefore call on the private sector to come and support these initiatives so we can keep our economy afloat. With the investment of 8 billion rand so far, we note and appreciate the great work and progress made in strategic road infrastructure implemented by SANRAL in the province. I know that the Premier would never leave the platform without talking about what we have done when it comes to the road network. Our partnership with SANRAL, we took that decision to say, by ourselves as a province, we want to partner with SANRAL, we'll give you these roads. The funding that's supposed to come to us goes to them to ensure that we have better roads. We are aware that SANRAL is now planning to spend 60 billion rand on roads projects here in the Eastern Cape in the next 5 years, and we are looking forward to that. It's important to highlight that all of these investments in the economic infrastructure are as a result of lobbying and mobilizing by the government of the Eastern Cape, as I just indicated. In 2024-25, an amount of 512.9 million rand has been added to the provincial roads maintenance grants, increasing the grant from an amount of 1.4 billion rand to 2.1 billion rand, Honorable Mhlaba, through you, Honorable Speaker. The grant is earmarked for 11 projects that will see upgrading of the gravel roads to surface standards. These include Phase 4 of N2 to Speach Hospital, Phase 3 of Willowvale to Dwesa, via Msengeni, and R72 to Hamburg. Thank you very much. The grant will also be used for ongoing maintenance of paved roads across all 6 districts and 2 metros, including major rehabilitation of Butterworth to Tsendane, N2 to Ntabankulu, N6 to Maltino, and N6 to Ilinge, and also to ensure ongoing maintenance of gravel roads across all 6 districts and 2 metros, including regraveling and plating. It should have been led, that lab should have been led by Honorable Mhlaba. So he's not appreciative of what we are giving him, HOD. The total budget for the Department of Transport is 5.7 billion rand in 2024-25 financial year, and 16.6 billion rand over the 2024 MTF. That's the budget for the Department of Transport. Honourable Speaker, we welcome the introduction of new infrastructure financing and delivery reforms by National Treasury with an intention to optimize the infrastructure value chain to be effective and efficient. These include reviewing of institutional arrangements and governance for catalytic infrastructure to create clearer mechanisms for accountability, cooperation, and coordination, and the introduction of several new financing instruments such as infrastructure bonds and concessional loans. Over the medium term, government will therefore be simplifying and streamlining the current regulatory and financing regime for financing strategic and economic infrastructure investments. And the reforms will seek to provide for a greater clarity and transparency about roles and responsibilities of existing infrastructure agency in government, whilst also seeking to expand the scope of the private sector in financing economic structure. More in particular, the institutional framework for public-private partnerships will be simplified with the expectations that such policy reforms immediately crowd in private capital. Speaker, in 2016, government developed the LEDPF with an intention to stimulate economic activity, preserve and to create jobs within the province. The initiatives of the province to promote the achievements of the LEDPF and localization are largely hampered by limitations placed by current legislation and litigation. In this regard, the new public procurement bill that is being introduced by National Treasury will ease the ability of the province to implement these initiatives. I think I spoke about it earlier on how we want to maximize on this bill in order to ensure that the LEDPF is realized in the province. Let me now, Madam Speaker, detail how we are allocating our equitable share and conditional grants. Since the dawn of democracy, honorable members, this government has been consistent in investing to the poor and marginalized, providing beyond reasonable doubt that indeed we are a caring government. With all the fiscal challenges we have experienced and continue to experience, we have made sure that we protect the social wage. We have been to every corner of the Eastern Cape, transforming public and social infrastructure such as it also creates a lot of jobs opportunities in communities and enhances the source and amount of income, in turn leading to better living standards. The building of public infrastructure offers a huge financial and jobs benefit to small businesses and the unemployed during construction. especially youth and women, and therefore contributing to decent life. Speaker, between 2020-21 and 2023-24, we invested over 153.2 billion rand to the Department of Education to transform the sector, including addressing education infrastructure challenges, ensuring that learner-teacher support material is provided, and that school nutrition program continues to feed our children at schools. To continue with the good work that we've been doing, we are allocating in this MTF 132.3 billion rand to the Department of Education. And on this year, financial year 2024-25, 42.4 billion is allocated to the department. This is the greatest slice of the pie. The greatest slice of our pie goes to you, Honorable Speaker, to you, Honorable Kade. An amount of 5.6 billion rand is allocated for education infrastructure grant over the medium-term expenditure framework to further develop school infrastructure. The grant has increased by an amount of 65.7 million rand in 2024-25 from an amount of 1.7 billion rand to 1.8, while the National Schools Nutrition Program grant increased by 27.2 million rand from 1.7 to 1.7 billion rand. The Scholar Transport Program is another critical vehicle to accessing quality learning, especially for rural learners. Through this program, provincial government ensures that deserving learners from quintile 1 and 2 will live within a 5-kilometer radius to areas of learning are provided with safe and reliable scholar transport. Let me say this. We have made a commitment. We are committing to scholar transport as treasurer. We said that to the Department of Transport and the Department of Education, that we are, as a treasury, committing to it. We are awaiting you to finalize that, but we are not going to wait until you come with the final costing and numbers before we can allocate funds to you. We have agreed that your learners will increase from 90,000 to 103,000. And we have committed to fund that. If there's anything over and above that, we are ready for discussion from you, Department of Transport and Education. I was talking to the HODs this morning, both HODs, MEC Ngata and MEC Kata. I was saying to them, I've been in your case since the beginning of this year, and you know that. Give me figures and give me costs, then we can start talking. I was saying them even today. Treasury is waiting for figures, the exact figures, and what are the costs. And before you can do that, we are unable to be certain that what we have budgeted for will be enough for you. To develop our children holistically, and now that's an estimation. We've got to be exact when we deal with finances, because anyone can produce a figure. But in order to, you must know exactly what is it in the province that we are transporting. But secondly, you must cost it, because within that, there are many ways, there are variables that drive the cost in scholar transport. The distance, the mode of transport, all of those things you should know by now. So you've got to be certain about that in order for you to be able to fund. So to develop our children holistically and lay groundwork for lifelong learning, a 3.76 billion rand has been allocated for the rollout of ECD, Early Childhood Development Program, over the 2024 MTF. The program supports around 86,000 children in the province. The final adjustments to the Department of Education is in their baseline include an additional amount of 1.1 billion rand in 2024-25 financial year and 3.5 billion rand over the MTF to cover the carried through costs in the public service wage bill. I think I spoke about this in the beginning of my speech. For the Department of Health, we invested 112 billion rand between 2021 and 2020 and 2021 and 2023 and 2024 for provision of medicines at hospitals and clinics, appointment of doctors and nurses, building of the state-of-the-art hospitals, and ultimately improving the health profile of the Eastern Cape. So for this MTF, we are allocating 93 billion rand to the Department of Health. And for 2024-25, we are allocating 30.1 billion rand. This is the second biggest slice of the cake goes to the Department of Health. There have been notable improvements in their grant allocations. As I indicated earlier, the National Tertiary Services grant increased by an amount of 100.7 million in 24-25 from an amount of 1.1 billion to 1.2 billion, as well as the health facility revitalization grant, etc., etc. Final adjustment to the department's baseline include an additional amount of 598 million rand in 24-25 and 1.8 billion rand over the 2024 MTF for wage agreement. I must highlight that provincial government continues to roll out its health turnaround plan that seeks to promote financial sustainability within health. The plan is work in progress and is targeting to reduce medical legal payouts, introduce health services optimization, digitalization of health services through e-health and strengthening of primary health and community health programs. I think if we could, through you, Honorable Speaker, MEC Maths, deal with digitalization in the Department of Health, many of our challenges will be gone. I even said that when I was speaking to the Treasury Department in our own discussion on this budget. I was asking them the question, when are we finalizing this project? We can't continue to pilot and pilot. Because one of the reasons we have a challenge in medical legal is because we're still working on paper. That's why if there's going to be a claim, you know when someone comes and inquire about a patient, and in hospital you can't find the file, you know exactly what's going to happen next. There's going to be there's going to be a claim. So we've got to work on that digitalization. So we invested 10.9 billion rand to social development between 2020 and 2021, 2020-21 and 2023-24 to transform our society by building conscious and capable citizens through the provision of integrated developmental social services with families at the core of social change. To continue with these services, we are allocating 9.2 billion rand to social development over the MTF, with 2.9 billion rand of that amount allocated in 2024-25. This morning, I spoke to the MEC for Social Development, Majek, and the MEC says she wants more money for social workers. So when you do your adjustment in November, you must think of that the MEC spoke to me for that. On the Department of Human Settlements, we invested 9 billion rand between 2020 and 21 and 2023 and 24. So we are allocating 2.3 billion rand in 2024-25 and 6.9 billion rand over the MTF. An amount of 1.5 billion rand is set aside for Human Settlements Development Grant, while 361.4 million rand is for the Informal Settlement Upgrading Partnership Grant. So we're expecting the MEC to go into these informal settlements and make a difference with that. Now, DISRAC has been allocated 3.2 billion rand over the MTF, and community safety has been allocated 433.9 million over the MTF to respond to crime and gender-based violence and femicide in the province. I know when it comes to community safety, people want to think of community safety as that department that should be getting almost equal to Honorable Kate because of the police. It's a service that cuts across. Unfortunately, it rests with the national department. In the Department of Cocta, we are allocating 3.4 billion rand over the MTF to provide support to municipalities, kingdoms, and traditional councils. We've also allocated an amount of 705.4 million rand in 2024-25 and 2 billion rand over the MTF to Provincial Legislature to perform their oversight function on the work that is done by provincial government. I know that Honorable the chair, not of the not of Cocta, Honorable Ndabeni, Honorable Ndabeni made a commitment that he will not leave this legislature before they get a particular slice. I don't even want to mention that slice from National Treasure. You know, Honorable Kasim, that's why. So we hope we're getting there, and we're doing all the best to ensure that we are able to perform your duty. The Office of the Premier has been allocated 1 billion rand, over 1 billion rand in 24-25 and 3.3 billion rand over the MTF to fund, amongst others, integrated youth development, provincial ICT programs, the monitoring and evaluation program, and human resource management. We've allocated an amount of 478.2 million rand in 2024-25 and 1.5 billion rand over the MTF to provincial treasury to continue to support provincial departments and municipalities to ensure sound financial and resource management. The Department of Public Works and Infrastructure has been allocated 2.6 billion rand 2024-25 financial year and 7.9 billion rand over the 2024 MTF, mainly to improve the infrastructure delivery capacity of provincial government. I know Apa MEC comes to me and says, Nithi masenze i-Bishop Precinct. I-Bishop Precinct is going to cost us 2 billion rand. Now gqiba nisinike ibudget ye-2.6 billion rand. Sishekelwe 600 million rand siza kwenza ntoni? And my response is very simple. There is no way you are going to spend 2 billion rand on the Bishop Precincts within 1 year. There is no way you can do that. You've got to phase it out. And as you phase it out, you must budget accordingly. Otherwise, like 2 billion rand, I was also like 600 million rand. You still have 2.6 billion rand. But if you want further explanation, your HOD must speak to my HOD with regards to that. For the province, the under expenditure on conditional grants has decreased from 641 million rand in 2019-20 to 309 million rand in 2022-23 financial year. Also, funds that the province lost to the National Revenue Fund on conditional grants decreased from 119.5 million rand in 2019-20 to 62.7 million rand in 2022 financial year. So at least we can see there's an improvement, we are starting to spend our funds. And when Honorable Williams tells us about MIG, for the first time in this December, where municipalities should have spent about 40% of their allocation. For the first time, the Eastern Cape did not lose any funds in December. All municipalities spent to the expected level. And that was done because of the introduction of the risk adjustment strategy. We said, going to the MEC, that must roll out to other grants. So that we are able to keep what is allocated to us, spend it in the Eastern Cape, and not lose. We can't afford to lose. For municipalities, we had lost 3.3 billion rand to the National Revenue Fund between 2019 and 2023 through rollover and stopping processes. We attributed that to external factors such as COVID-19, etc., etc. However, an amount of 1.6 billion rand was reallocated back to the province in municipalities that are performing better. At least there's something good in municipalities that those that are spending get to benefit from those that are not spending. And we've also been successful in persuading the national government to say, if we as Eastern Cape have not spent 3.3 billion rand, please don't reallocate that money to other provinces. Reallocate it to us as the province. And that battle we have won. So we equally encourage municipalities that are affected by national disasters to improve spending on disaster funds. Government has set aside a total of an amount of 944 since 2021-22 to fix municipal infrastructure affected by disasters. Of that amount, 658 million was allocated in 2023-24 to recover municipal infrastructure that was affected by the disasters. Speaker, there are 7 municipalities that have been supported to apply to participate in the municipal debt relief program coordinated by National Treasury have all been approved. The municipalities were supported due to huge ESCOM arrears totaling to 2.9 billion rand as at 31st of March 2023. The supported municipalities are Makana, Dr. Peasno Die, Amahlati, Raymond, Mhlaba, Walter Sisulu, Mkijima, and Ngwetembo. So we supported their application, Honorable Williams, on the proviso that they stick to the conditions. I know that there is an appetite for them not to stick to those conditions and still benefit. No, you cannot benefit in both ways. It's their own creation that they are found in this mess, and this is something that is trying to rescue them. Then, therefore, the conditions that they must pay their current account going forward and not skip any is a condition. We're giving you money, scrapping your what you are owing to ESCOM. Now you must keep to that condition. The condition you set aside. We're not changing. I know that you are also the Department of Water seems not to be supporting this, and hopefully you are supporting it. The payment arrangement is over a period of 3 years. Subject to meeting the conditions set out in MFMA Circular 124. They write off a third of the total debt each year over a period of 3 years. The Provincial Treasury and COGTA must work together to monitor compliance with the conditions as set out. Now, the words of British broadcaster and former politician Nigel Farage explain our situation better. Honorable, he says, open quote, we shouldn't measure everything in terms of GDP figures or economics. There is something called quality of life, close quote. The quality of life of people of South Africa in the Eastern Cape has improved, as proven by Stats SA of Census 2022. The 7th administration awaits us. We amassed enough evidence to prove our ability and capability to change the lives of the people of the Eastern Cape. Let's work together towards consolidating the gains that we have achieved during this term to build the Eastern Cape we want. There is no new money, and therefore we must show continuity on the good things we have been doing and exercise financial prudence. If we unite in support of the fundamentals of this budget, we are destined to deliver to the next administration an Eastern Cape that has a strong economy, stable public finances, and protected social wage. Somlomo eli litye lokugqibela sidakanca olu hlahlelwa buwemali kwesi sigaba sesithandathu sorhulumente. Ngifuna ukwenza amanzi ombulelo kwiNkulumbuso yePhondo Comrade Oscar Mabuyane. Ndiyabulela ngesikhokelo esithe ngqo nesingagungqiyo othe wasibonakalisa ukusukela ngo-2019. Koogxa bam abangamalungu esigqeba, ndiyabulela ngenkxaso nithe nayibonakalisa ngexesha siphethe lo msebenzi wekwenza impilo zabantu baseMpuma Kapa ngcono. Kuwe Somlomo kwakunye namalungu wale ndlu ngakumbi ikomiti ejongene nezimali. Ndiyabulela ngokumane nisinqwanqwada, nisibonisa indlela apho sithe saphazama khona ngenjongo yokuphucula indlela esisa ngayo inkonzo ebantwini. Okugqibela, ndibulele kumphathi wesebe, umnumzana uMajeke, kwakunye nesigqeba sakhe. Nabasebenzi bonke besebe ngomsebenzi omhle abathe gqolo ukuwenza. Ndiswele imilomo eliwaka. Kubantu beliphondo, abaxhasi kwakunye nabo sisebenzisana nabo kule ndlela. Enkosi ngokusinyamezela nangokusebenzisana nathi. Inde le ndlela ifuna abomeleleyo. Ndifuna nje ukuthi siyabuya. Enkosi mhlanga phambili.
Thank you, honorable members. You can calm down now, seeming everybody's excited about the figures, honorable MEC. Honorable members, at this point, the bill will stand referred to the Standing Committee on Budget and Money Bills in terms of Rule 161. I will just ask the Secretary to make an announcement.
Honorable members and guests, you are all invited to a finger lunch courtesy of Provincial Treasury. It will be served at the Mama Albertina Sisulu Members Lobby and also at the Mama Nokanime Thomas Dining Hall, as well as at the Baba Mandla Makupula Garden of Remembrance at the back. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. This concludes the business of the day. Yes, we are formally adjourning the House.